Andrew here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Tales of Neverwinter Nights. So we left last week with a note from Marvalyn. She had just built her and furnished her cabin or cottage and everything, and she had left a note that there are several missing posts between the one above and the next one, which is the one I'm going to start with today. To sum up, several weeks have gone since the cottage was built, and Marvalyn has returned to House Relentar to handle her priestess duties. She has not had a chance to return to the cottage since it was completed. So we are starting this week back in Relentar, the Drow City. And so let's get started on that. A summons by Marvalyn. A rap on her chamber's outer door caused Marvalyn to look up sharply. Angered by the offensive intrusion, the Yathrin called out impatiently, "What is it you want? It had better be important." The servant shouted through the door, "I have a message from Yathrin Erlani." With a roll of her eyes at the assassin, she moved reluctantly to the door and opened it. Frowning at the male who dared interrupt, her eyes flashed with anger. "Be quick, Wal," Bob snarled at him. The servant bowed to her and held out the scroll. A sly smile crossed his face as he spied Relentar moved into the doorway of the antechamber. Hesitantly, he held out the second scroll to the furious priestess, saying, "This is for the Velga Jabuk." A scowl crossing her face as she read, Marvalyn snapped, "Tell my sister we will be there soon." The servant turned to leave quickly, happy that he still lived. Dressing slowly, Mav glared at the amused look on Relentar's face. "She knows I don't see you very often, Tarl, so you can wipe that smile off right now." With a sweeping bow, the assassin chuckled, "As you wish, my dark sweet." Offering a pouting Yathrin his arm, the two headed to Erlana's room. Marvalyn entered Erlana's chamber with Tarl a few steps behind. He bowed slightly and leaned against the wall, folding his arms, waiting to hear why she summoned them. Annoyed by her sister's assertiveness, Marvalyn greeted Erlana coolly, saying, "We are here as you deemed, Yathrin Erlana." Erlana had never before summoned them in such a manner, but did not back down to her sister's remark. Instead, she swept across the room to the door, placing her hand on the mithril knob. She turned to Marvalyn and said, "Nothing holds you here, sister. Leave if you want." "Why did you call us, Eri?" Marvalyn said waspishly. "If you would so easily dismiss us." Calmly, Erlana opened the door and said, "I thought you would like to see me on my return. If you do not, then leave, both of you." In the meantime, Relentar watched and grinned slyly at the bickering between the two sisters. Usually they plotted against him, and he could not help snickering at the sudden turn of events. Stepping forward, he thought to put an end to the foolishness, calling, "Yathrin." As both turned to Relentar, they noticed his hand move ever so slightly. Suddenly, they felt their feet leave the floor. Their anger at each other then turned on the Velga Jabuk. Marvalyn cast a spell that quickly released them from the assassin's magic. Erlana's eyes flashed in fury as she snarled at the male, "You no longer have power over me, Relentar." Upon uttering these words, a great flash of light filled the room, and the heart-shaped amulets that each Yathrin wore disappeared. Relentar then said without expression, "I have never held any power over you, except that which you gave me. Now that bond is broken." Erlana looked at Relentar in disbelief as she said, "That is not what I wished. Why must the bond be broken?" With a sudden thought, Marvalyn rummaged in her bag of holding, frantically retrieving an ebony box. When she opened the lid, the box turned into a magnificent spider that quickly leapt from her hand and scurried across the room, across the floor, and up Relentar's body to his shoulder. Marvalyn recalled the evening Tarl had gifted her with the box and slumped slowly to the floor. Seeing the stricken look crossing Marvalyn's face, Relentar reached his hand out to her. The spider crawled down his arm to his hand and leapt into Marvalyn's shoulder. "This will always be there if you are in need, Yathrin," he said. As Erlana watched Relentar and Marvalyn, she began to understand his words. Relentar looked from one to the other and then said calmly, "Erlana, you spoke the words that caused the amulets to disappear. Do you not understand?" He then turned his back on the Yathrin. Erlana walked to him, placing her hands on his shoulder. Relentar turned to Erlana and said softly, This is how it was to be from the first. Marvalyn, lost in her own thoughts, had not noticed Arilana move to Relator. When she looked up, she saw them embrace. An empty feeling overwhelmed her, thinking she had lost them both. Marvalyn stood and left the room. Wandering the hallways without paying attention, Mauve soon found herself in a small unused room. Clearing away the dust that looked like centuries with a simple spell, she noticed some ancient and yellowed scraps of parchment. Before she could investigate further, both Relator and Arilana called to her mentally to return. Making a note of the location of this room, she placed a simple ward on the door and returned to Ares' chambers. When Mauve arrived back in Ares' room, a servant followed her in. He bowed to Arilani and said, "Ilharin Theodo looks for you, Yathrin. He has a message from the Ilharis. He seeks you on the surface, not knowing you have returned." Sensing that Marvalyn needed to speak with Relator as she had done, Arilana used this as an excuse to leave the two alone once more. Candlelight by Marvalyn. Sitting alone in the inn in Longsaddle and pondering all the past events of her life, Marvalyn did not notice time flying by. Gazing out the window momentarily, she realized dusk had returned tonight. With the moon rising high in the night sky, a mist began to roll in casting shadows of silhouette. Feeling the rush of air brush against her neck, Marvalyn turned around. A single candle shed its soft light on the table as at the very back of the inn. Rising from her seat, she approached the table, moving closer and noticed a dagger pinned to the center holding down a piece of blood-stained paper. Marvalyn reached forward and removed the dagger. She frowned as she read a few words written on the note. "I have the information you seek. I await you in the private room and back." Crumpling the note in her hand, her frown deepened. "Well, to think I would willingly walk into something so obviously a trap," she muttered quietly. Moving back towards her own table, Marvalyn quickly wrote a note in response. "If you wish to speak to me, then do so here in the main room. I will decide whether to seek a private chamber or not." A deep chuckle over her shoulder caused a shiver of excitement to ripple down her back. "Then you, Yathrin," Relator spoke with humor in his voice as he bowed in greeting. "I see you have learned not to take things at face value anymore." Rising to face the Velga Jabuk, Marvalyn spoke huskily. "You have taught me much, my gentle assassin. One of those is never to enter a trap you know about, but seek the one that is hidden." Her eyes traveled hungrily over his lean, muscular frame. "It has been many days since we last met, Tarl. Do your duties keep you so busy you find no more time for this, Yathrin?" Again, his chuckle sent heat through her veins as she replied, "I always find time for you, my dark sweet. What is it you require? I am at your disposal for the evening." Her eyes glowed like twin sapphires with promise as she slipped closer to him. Lust flared in him as he felt the heat of her body. "You know what I require, Talra. Go to my room and await me there," she whispered in a sultry voice. "A Dosqualer," he replied, and with another bow, he slipped into the shadows and disappeared. When Marvalyn entered her chamber, she smiled quickly at the naked form standing before her. "Exus, you do know what I want," she purred. "Of course, Yathrin," he replied with a sly grin. Murmuring a simple spell, unseen servants began undressing Marvalyn. As the gown slowly revealed the dusky beauty, Relator's eyes drank in the sight. Her long hair fell down her back in waves of molten silver. The full, burnt breast stood proudly as if asking to be kissed. His eyes traveled further downward, enjoying the lovely curves of the slight before him. The flat stomach and tapered waist that flared at the hips made his hands clench with desire to place them there. The long, shapely legs, the silver triangle of hair beckoned to him with a secret passage he knew so well. Marvalyn stepped closer to the assassin. Her body brushed against his. At the contact, the flames of passion flared into a raging inferno. Lips met the savage needs, of tongues danced with the hunger raging within. As her arms wrapped around his neck, she lifted her into darkness, into his strong arm, and carried her to the bed. Dark dream. As Relator fell deeper into slumber, Loth sent him a dream. Relator found himself standing before some steps that led up to the squat shape of an ebony spider throne. Within the regal chair, captured stars cast only enough light to reveal the small area around it. With the legs tucked around her, the young human female sits at the base, gazing admiration, her features shadowed by dim light. Tarl sees only the long, blazing red hair, yet she seems familiar. A few feet away from her worship form rests the dead body of one known as Lord Theodo. Another knight lies near death at her feet. As Tarl's eyes slowly takes all this in, a cruel voice hisses from the shadow of the throne. "Menu assassin, how do you like my little pawns?" As he focuses on the form sitting in the throne, power crashes down in on him. Dropping to his knees from the force, the voice once again speaks. "Much better, Walla Juluk." A cruel smile forms on the cold and beautiful features of the young Drowis. Surrounding her is the shadow of a large spider form. With evil glee, she reaches down and pats the young girl on the head. She has done so well. Alluro Ferraro. I give up on those. Some drow words. Her stare pierces through Tarl's skull like knives as she asks, "Do you not like this magic charm?" Grabbing the girl's head with both hands, the Drowis he now knows as Law turns to face him. Her eyes narrow as the smile grows even crueler. And more drow, I'm not going to try. I used to be able to actually speak this fluently. No more. A shock of recognition travels through Tarl's body as he recognizes the human form of Marvalyn. Her purpose is almost complete. Her evil laugh sends chills down his spine as she continues. "You will betray her, then you will kill her. It is my wish." Tarl looks again at this human he knows yet doesn't know. Her face filled with only devotion of loss seems vapid and stupid. Yet he sees what looks like a tear fall before she turns back, once again worshipping the goddess. Lot looks down at her and smiles wickedly. The betrayal will kill this little human, her last spark of humanity. Still watching Tarl, she makes a small gesture and all goes dark. Now a floating sensation fills him. Looking down, Tarl can see the town of Tribor laid out before him. Soon he is watching two figures battle in the arena. A death match. As he flies closer, invisible to all below, he can see that one of the figures has fallen, the female. Now he can make out who is fighting. It is himself and Marvalyn. Tarl wakes up. And that's where we're going to end this week. Interesting little tidbit about the death matches in Tribor. So Tribor was the arena. It was originally intended to be, you would go in and you would fight monsters, salamanders and that. Neverwinter Nights originally did not have player versus player combat. And the coding, you could not fight another player with your sword or your shield or physical combat. You could only do it with magic. And that's what PvP in Neverwinter Nights became. So when that became very popular, they sanctioned off areas that were PvP zones. You had the arena, you had the Lost Hills, you had the Neverwinter Woods. In all my years I played, I still get lost in that damn area, and you had B-Run, and you had some other areas, or the sewers under Neverwinter. These were PvP zones, but the rest of the world was non-PvP. So one of the two most popular places were the entrance to the Lost Hills, though I never really cared for that free-for-all. But there would be free-for-all going constantly. I always preferred deeper in doing jumps in the Lost Hills. And then the Tribor Arena. And those were like you would, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4. And you'd go in and you'd trigger the combat and go. As for death matches, I only witnessed a couple of them. And what they were a gentleman's agreement. And that's why I only ever witnessed a couple of them, and I never took part in any of them, is if you lost, you agreed to delete your character. You were dead. There was no coming back from it. If you lost, you deleted your character. And if you agreed to a death match and then you reneged, you would feel the weight of the players, the community. So death matches were a thing, but like I said, I only I didn't even witness them. I heard of a couple of them, but I never partook in them. I mean, it took a long time. Unless you had a friend power leveling you, it took a long time to level up in Neverwinter Nights. So why would you waste all that time and money? Didn't make sense to me. But yeah. So anyway, that was Marvalyn's story, and that's where we're ending today. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe, costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching this on Rumble, please follow my channel. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. Not only does it get us interacting, it really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.